So look, last year's show was sort of the big breakthrough, and that was Going Under, right? That was called Going Under. Have I got that right?
Yeah, don't ask me why.
Okay. So let's talk a little bit about that first before we move on to the new show. So I mean, the dyspraxia was a part of that. You're gay as well, which is have you seen some great stuff about that? That's an interesting angle as well.
You said that then in like a way, like as if I didn't know, you know, like you were diagnosing me. I'm gay.
You're gay. I reckon you might be gay. Should give it a try. See how you get on with it. Is what I would say.
All right.
It's not for everyone, but I think you might like it.
I think I will.
No, and but also I think what I'm sort of interested in. You also talked about. I mean, your sister's had leukemia. And you talked about that, but I was quite interested that you sort of said something that made, in my own cancer show, the thing that I sort of realised was going through something like that, you sort of, I still want to do good comedy, I still care about doing good comedy, but equally, I sort of don't give a fuck anymore about the comedy, and therefore, I'm I'm miles better at stand-up as a result. I feel like you had the same thing with that, right?
I'm so glad you said that, because I've said that before and I felt like really pretentious, but it really and this is awful, but Phoebe having leukemia was the best thing that happened to my comedy career. Like, you know, I will be forever grateful to the doctor who found it. Yeah, like it was literally that thing. I was so stressed about where my comedy career was going, like, and then Phoebe got diagnosed with cancer, and then shortly after I got like my first big opportunity, and I didn't have an agent, and it was like the disability comedy extravaganza with Rosie Jones on Dave, and
right.
For me to be doing that without an agent is like, would normally have been absolutely terrifying. In my head, I'd have been like, this is it. And it was just like, this isn't it. Like, I've got so much bigger fish to fry at home. Like, and that made that kind of, just completely took the pressure off. And then, from then on, I just kind of, everything clicked into place, which was mad.
But equally as well, I think even you talking about it there, it's quite, it's full on. The jokes are pretty full on, right? And the jokes you do about it are pretty full on. But that's the only way, I think, to when you're going through something like that, or with yourself or with a family member or someone you care about, it does seem to be the only reasonable way to try and confront something that's terrifying, right? Because I hope she's doing okay, and I think there's a
she is, she's doing great,
it's a long-term thing that hopefully she'll eventually recover from, but it's still absolutely terrifying. And I think the jokes and you having you there to joke with her and her jokes back are all a fantastic way of coping, but also just getting through it, I think, right?
She is doing really, really well. Like,
great.
I think Phoebe's big thing is like, so when I asked her if I could do some jokes about in the show, like, it's not something I would have ever done in my club set or anything. No. Like, I now will do the jokes in the club set because they're fantastic. But she was basically like, oh yeah, you can do it, but my one rule is you don't tempt fate. Like, I don't want you to go on and say she's absolutely sound now.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I can see your point, but that makes my job quite difficult. Because the audience, and actually it's the same off stage, people ask me how Phoebe is, and they want me to just say, oh, she's absolutely sound. But her kind of message is sort of, yeah, I am doing really well. Like, my intense chemo's over. I'm on maintenance. I think she's just come off maintenance, actually. But she will live with the fear of leukemia coming back for the rest of her life. Yeah. So it's something that we've learned to not shy away from. And we're not just going to pretend that it's not as serious as it is to make it an easier conversation. Like, tackle it head on and like, like, you do. yeah, anyone who's been through, like, if you're in a funny family and you go through something horrible, you get some absolute bangers, like jokes, like they're flying, like, because it's the only way you can cope with it. So I think when I didn't want to talk about it originally in my debut hour because it just felt like so typical, like 40-minute mark and all of that. But when I started speaking to people, like comics were like, you've got like, you can't have had the year you've had, like, to have gone sort of your career's made so much progress whilst that's been going on in the background and have like a debut hour and not talk about it would be, mad, really.
It is, and but I think it's interesting having done my show about it. People, my very minor cancer that isn't that's very very treatable. People. I think we don't. It's weird. It's something I hadn't really thought about, but we don't talk about it because I think people are. You're worried because also you talk about it and then someone goes, "Oh yeah, my sister died of that," or my dad died of. So you get into a difficult conversation. But it's sort of one of those things I think people want to hear about, and I've really found doing my tour the people hang around afterwards to tell me in detail about their own stories because I think they don't get an opportunity to talk about it. So I think even obviously you're being funny about it. And still taking it seriously, obviously, but it's possible to joke and not be flippant. But I think it's surprising because it's a thing that actually out of all these things, so disability, any kind of disability, affects a small amount of people. You might go, okay, so I'm going to put that in the back of my mind. I don't want to think about it as an average person, maybe. But cancer is so everyone's got a cancer story from their family or their close circle of friends. And yeah, it is something I'm sort of really surprised. It is sort of coming around now into into comedy a bit more, into the comedy tours and stuff a bit more. But it is one of those things that women usually will talk about things, but women don't really talk about cancer very much. So that sort of shows you how taboo it is. And I think it's great that it's great that you had this show to talk about it, I guess.
I love that outlook that if women aren't talking about it, it's heavy. They'll talk about anything.
Well, it's true, but I think men sometimes need a little push to talk honestly.
Oh
about
so true.
But which is I think a lot of comedians are trying to deal with, and a lot of your generation of comedians are dealing with a lot better than my generation comedians did in terms of like talking about mental illness and depression and that sort of things that I think 30 years ago when I would have been about your age it would have been quite a rare person to talk about that. It was all, even within the stand-up circuit, it was all bravado.
Well, I've always been before the show, I was very much like, I have no interest in talking about serious issues. And to some extent, I don't at all. Like, I have no, interest in trying to make a difference or whatever. I just want to, I feel like if I go for that, it will get in the way of the act. But obviously, as a comic, you're trying to find unique angles on your life, like the reasons why you're different, particularly if, like me, all your jokes are about you. So I kind of these days don't have any choice because as I get older, more serious stuff is happening in my life, and that's the stuff that's shaping who I am. So I'm kind of like, well, I'm going to have to try and be funny about that. So it's not to say, I'm doing really serious bits. It's literally just daft wordplay jokes and all of nonsense. And but the setups are about out of context, maybe sound a bit bleak or whatever, or like you're confronting a serious. It is great. Like, it was my first year being reviewed last year, and it's bonkers when you read back a review and they're saying like all this stuff that you're doing, and you're like, am I? Wow. Well, you forget it's you they're talking about. You're like, wow, that lad is really trying to use his voice to make a difference. But yeah.